Chapter 12, Hydronautics and Beyond. We lived in Colombia for 20 years. The first 10 years I was employed by Hydronautics. During the last few years of my employ, Hydronautics was bought by Tracor, a multinational firm, and became known as Tracor Hydronautics. After the acquisition, I started consulting part-time for the architect of the Capitol's legal division. My responsibilities at Hydronautics were in the very capable hands of Harvey Post, the controller, and Joe Binder, the contracts manager, both of whom reported to me. My activities at the architect of the Capitol involved claims arising out of construction of the new, at that time, James Madison Memorial Library building, which was an extension of the Library of Congress. I also was involved in negotiating and settling claims arising out of the construction and repair of the Capitol Power Plant. It was interesting work, and I was well compensated for it. While at Hydronautics, I had several interesting experiences. Two which stand out in mind are the Osprey 990 program and the Bulgarian Ship Hydrodynamic Center episodes. The Osprey 990 program was a U.S. Navy program in which the Navy was modifying a Vietnam-era riverboat to be a testbed for a Garrett Corporation 990 gas turbine engine. Hydronautics was the prime contractor, and we subcontracted the boat modification portion of the task to Barber Boat Works in New Bern, North Carolina. The boat's hull was modified, and all the components of its new propulsion system were procured and installed on the craft, except the Garrett 990 engines, which the Navy was supplying as government-furnished equipment. The Navy had a separate development contract with Garrett for the gas turbine engines. The engines failed their tests, and Garrett wanted an additional amount of money to correct the failure. Instead of coming up with the $50,000 to $100,000 needed to rectify the problem and successfully complete the project, the Navy terminated the contract for its convenience. The U.S. government had already expended several $1 million on the program. It cost the government several $100,000 in termination costs. We at Hydronautics made more money on the program than the value of the contract because of the termination costs. The senator from North Carolina ranted on the floor of the U.S. Senate about the insanity and wastefulness of the Navy in canceling the Osprey program. The ill-fated program made headlines in the New Bern Leader newspaper, but that was not the end of the story. Because the Navy had paid for all the work done on the craft, the government owned the craft. We at Hydronautics awaited disposition instructions from the Navy. They came. We were ordered to send the Osprey 990 modified craft to the Cherry Point Marine Base. The end of this amazing saga of government waste and incompetence came when the Marines used the multi-million-dollar boat for target practice. The second incident I mentioned above involved the United Nations and the Bulgarian Ship Hydrodynamic Center in Varna, Bulgaria, under contract through the United Nations International Maritime Organization, IMCO, based in London. Hydronautics was to supply Bulgaria with a large amplitude hydrodynamic planar motion mechanism, LAHPM, for use in their Varna, Bulgaria Hydrodynamic Towing Tank. We manufactured the item, and the Bulgarian Ship Hydrodynamic Center, BSHC, sent two of its scientists/engineers to our facility in Laurel, Maryland. The Bulgarian representatives were Evgeny Milanov and Vladimir Chetukov. They stayed with Diana and I in our home and watched American TV till all hours and read extensively the encyclopedias we had and other Western literature to which they did not have access in then communist Bulgaria. They stayed for 3 weeks of training. After delivery of the LAHPM to Bulgaria and its installation by Hydronautics personnel and several successful test runs by the Bulgarian personnel, we invoiced the United Nations, IMCO, for the price set out in the contract. The Bulgarians refused to approve payment, and we took them to arbitration before an International Chamber of Commerce arbitrator, Sir Cedric Barclay by name, to resolve the matter. The hearing was held in Paris, France, because it was considered neutral ground. As the hearing entered its third day of testimony, Vladimir Chetukov took the stand. We asked him if he had received 3 weeks of training in the U.S. at the hydronautics facility. He nodded his head vertically and pronounced loudly, "Niet!" We repeated the question, and again he nodded yes, but exclaimed no in a loud Russian, "Niet!" We quickly learned that in Bulgaria, a nodding vertically meant no. He was then confronted with a telegram sent by Dr. Bogdanov, head of BSHC, to us at Hydronautics, which thanked us profusely for the wonderful training we had provided to Mrs. Chetukov and Milanov during their 3-week stay at Hydronautics. This was before emails and the internet. Case closed. We won, and the money due us was paid. While at Hydronautics, my duties took me to such diverse places as Israel, England, France, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, Germany, Japan, and South Korea. After 10 years at Traker Hydronautics, I formed my own consulting company in 1982 called the Phineas Company. As the Phineas Company, I did a lot of consulting work for and with Sigma Associates, which was a company formed by Howard Marks. Howard was my cost/price analyst at Litton, and the two of us developed a fast friendship and deep respect for each other's professional capabilities. Sigma Associates won several major consulting jobs in which I participated. The Pullman Claims. We prepared a consolidated request for equitable adjustment, REA, for the law firm of Sidley and Austin in Chicago. The REA was in excess of $240 million and was on behalf of the Pullman Corporation against Amtrak. I commuted to Chicago every Monday morning from BWI and worked with the Sigma team preparing the claims. We ultimately recovered a substantial sum for Pullman in arbitration. The Husky Oil defense. Sigma was retained by Husky Oil Company, which was defending claims against it by the U.S. Department of Interior. Husky Oil had a contract to work on the North Slope Alaskan pipeline. It had several subcontractors under contract at the beginning of the project, but about 8 years into the effort, most of them had either ceased to exist or were no longer under contract. The resolution of this conflict required me to take several trips to Alaska. U.S. Postal Service. I was retained by the Postal Service on their FDRS program to establish and monitor their source selection processes. This program lasted several months and was a huge success. The SNEP program. This was a U.S. Navy program to develop and modernize bases for the Saudi Arabian Navy in both Jeddah and Jubail. I traveled to Saudi to monitor performance and prepare claims against the Corps of Engineers, who were the construction agent of the U.S. government. We represented a subsidiary of LTV, a Dallas-based company, U.S. Postal Service Y2K program. Based on my performance on the source selection contract, I was retained as outside counsel on the Y2K program. This program was instituted in late 1998 as computer programming glitches had the world alarmed about what would happen when computers had to register the change of the century from the 1900s to 2000s. It was a major monetary boost for me and enabled me to build my retirement fund to a comfortable level. One of the major benefits of the program, Diana and I were living in West Virginia by then, was that I got to spend time with Jimmy and stayed at his apartment 3 days a week. We had long talks and ate terrible food at a nearby Denny's for supper some of the time. At other times, we dined at nice restaurants on Wisconsin or Connecticut avenues. During this time, I also did a lot of teaching for American Graduate University on the subjects of government procurement and contract law. Some of the seminars were public and some were held at company locations. I instructed contracts and program management personnel from most of the major defense industry Fortune 500 companies. My work as the Phineas Company took me to several of these United States and many foreign countries. Among the more challenging and exotic countries where I traveled were Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, China, Japan, and Korea.